In conversation for Disruptors with Vusi Thembekwayo, well-known public speaker, entrepreneur, as well as investor as a dragon in South Africa. Good to have you as always, sir.
Sawubona.
Yeah,
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good, thanks. Let's unpack the journey that you've had as a disruptor. Your career started off as a public speaker, Rockstar of public speaking by note. And look at you today as a businessman, an entrepreneur, and one who's actually paying it forward by investing in other startups.
Right.
Where did that disruptive mentality come from?
I think when you start, I think being an entrepreneur by its very design means you've got to look at things differently. So when I came into the world of public speaking, it was a fairly fixed market. It had worked a certain way. You know, there were bureaus that were operating in the world, so you needed to go to a speaker bureau, they would represent you to clients. And the reason that was is because in the 60s and 70s, when the industry was coming up, there was no internet. So for clients to book speakers, they had to go and find bureaus who had a telephone directory of speakers. That's actually where it comes from. And I decided that I didn't want to go with the bureau, one, because they fixed your price that you could go to market at, and I hated the idea of a fixed price system. The second was because they represented speakers like commodities. So Vusi would not get known on their portal of expertise, but rather you need a speaker, must they be black, should they speak nice English, you can have them. And here are the 3 speakers, book one, and this is what they cost. I didn't like that. I wanted to own my content. And the most important thing is I wanted to own my clients. I wanted to know who the client was that was booking me, why they were making that booking decision, so that I could replicate the system over and over again. So it was difficult in the early days, but as time went and I completely disrupted their model, it was very difficult for them to respond because I could talk directly to the booking manager at a corporate. I could talk directly to the booking manager at a large advertising agency. I knew what they wanted. And as a result, I could create products, talks that reflected what they wanted. So I was always ahead of the market from that perspective.
You mentioned something so critical there. You didn't want to be fixed at a particular cost, so you knew your value. You wanted to interact with the client directly so that you know that what they want. And you addressed a need by creating a product which is specific to what it is that they need.
Yes.
Do you find that in your interactions with other speakers, other entrepreneurs, that they use that fundamental model and principle in the day-to-day activities that they undertake?
Look, and I say this with the greatest of respect to some of my colleagues in the speaking industry, but the answer is no, not many. The reason that is because many speakers, particularly in South Africa, globally it's changing a bit, but many speakers, particularly in South Africa, still think it's speaking that gets you the gig, not what you speak about and whether or not you're an authority on it. So my clients are talking about how many runs do you have in the scoreboard. I get booked. It's about whether or not I have something in my history that proves that I have done something that they want to listen to me about. It's about runs on the scoreboard. So if I'm going to invite you, as this morning I was speaking to a group, executive group of a large listed cement business. I tell you, I'm only in that room because I've got runs on the scoreboard. I can talk to them about business. I've built businesses. So they're looking at me and going, he's got runs on the scoreboard, we can listen to him. It's not about you got a pretty face and you speak well and you sound well and we've seen a show of yours somewhere.
It's beyond that now.
It has to be. It's about content. And this is what I think many speakers just didn't get then, and some are still not getting it now. What you say is critical, the content is critical, and even more critical than that is knowing what the client wants, because if you can't connect these 2 bits of insights, what's the point? You know, there's some clients who are watching this who will know, there are still speakers working today who are delivering the same keynote with the same pauses and the same jokes that they were 15 years ago. Hasn't changed. Because they don't know who the client is. For them, it's one more conference, one more speaking engagement.
That brings us to a topic regarding relevance and adaptability to an ever-changing environment. How are you getting that right, even in your journey now as an entrepreneur who's actually sold off his business and on to the next project?
Yes. So that's difficult, right? I think one of the most difficult things to do as an entrepreneur is to know the signals from the noise. So when you are close to the customer, you're getting a lot of feedback and a lot of insight. What's important is to know which of that is important, which to harness and which to act on, and which to discard. And there's a part of it that's science, but there's a huge part of it that's intuition, that's just gut. You can feel when a client tells you something that this is a mover. I'll give you an example. About 5-6 years ago, the concept of innovation, disruption in large corporate businesses started to take a hold. That was 5-6 years ago. In South Africa, we're talking about it today, but in our firm, we started doing work around the 3rd Industrial Revolution, then the 4th Industrial Revolution 6 years ago. Why? Because when we heard the insights coming from Europe, we knew that there were insights we needed to act on. But you have to separate the noise from the signals.
How do you disrupt like that, Vusi, when you don't have support? Because disruptors don't always get his support immediately when they launch their ideas, right?
You know what it is I mean, I look at it on my journey now. I've typically found you have to move. The universe will follow. If you wait for the, when you work in a large corporate, you go to the boss, you present him a plan, you ask for a budget, he gives you the budget, you execute it. Yeah, that's not how entrepreneurship works. In entrepreneurship, you do the thing. Say, I'm going to build this car and it's going to be pink, build it. With what? I'm not sure. Where's the money going to come from? I really don't know. When am I going to finish it? I have no clue, but I will build it. And typically what you find is once the chassis is built, someone comes and goes, this is an interesting concept. Let's do the body. Let's see what the bodywork looks like. I'll give you 100,000 Rand. So you do the bodywork and they go, this is nice. And they bring a friend of theirs who goes, I have a tire manufacturing company. I'm going to give you some tires and some mag wheels. Then there's an engine that's being donated. So the journey of entrepreneurship, this thing about resources, which you're speaking about, is you have to throw forward and the resources will follow. But you don't get the resources and then throw forward. It doesn't work that way.
I have to pick your brain on radical economic transformation. You've been very bold on it. And I think that you're taking direction through hashtag Top 40, the 40 entrepreneurs that you'll move through an incubation process in trying to disrupt the thinking of black business individuals that it's more than tenderpreneurship. Right.
So maybe a bit of context, right? So in the early days when I started first obviously in public speaking, then invested in a research cohort. And from the research and the public speaking, clients started saying, we love what you're saying and we love this research you're referencing. Can we buy the research from you? Well, that's great. So I'll sell you the research. And then there was a client in the US who found some of the work we were doing phenomenal. And they said, can we have a program where we give you some of our research and you can license it and use it for your keynotes, which later then became strategy conversations for clients. So we started executing 4 5-year strategies for clients, large listed companies. And by the way, we'd like to license some of yours. Oh, that's fantastic, why not? And what they did not anticipate, and in truth, neither did we, I must be honest with you, was the rate of revenue growth we would see when we started doing it. So we did do it, and it did work, and I built a phenomenal business. And then they said, we like your business, we want to buy an equity in it, and now they've bought the largest part of the business as shareholders. So to answer your question about radical economic transformation, me, as a black business person, I define myself as a business person who's black, not a black business person. So I don't come from the premise that my skin color defines my competence. I'm competent, then I'm black. And that's what I bring to the conversation of this radical economic transformation. So I think for me, we need to have a conversation about whether or not we want an economic transformation that focuses on income distribution or ownership, because we can't have both. What we've tried to do is income distribution. So we've taken large companies, taken 26% of them, given them to a few politically connected elites, distributed incomes, and those distributed incomes, by the way, didn't trickle down to the people at the bottom of the pyramid. That's why they're protesting in streets, right? And off the back of it, we didn't say that black entrepreneurs build businesses. And if we didn't say build long-term consumer-facing large businesses. We said to them, build a business that can supply a government department with injections for a hospital. So until we make injections rather than supply injections, we're going to have a problem. My view of the radical economic transformation, it needs to happen, must do, but it must start with the mind of the black entrepreneur first, teaching him that ownership is critical and teaching him that it's a multi-generational project. You and I are not going to fix it. It's going to be you, me, and then our kids, and then their kids.
Excellence is standard, no need for black excellence.
100%. Because you're competent. Google can compete with anybody in the world. It's not about whether or not you're black or female, you're good. And we must acknowledge that you are good.
We'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for your time. Vusi Thembekwayo, entrepreneur, public speaker, and business extraordinaire of note.